Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Seattle Independent Schools Virtual College Summit. We're excited that you're here. We're going to wait just another minute or so, let all of our attendees click the right buttons, get into our Zoom room, and we'll get started here shortly. So thanks again for being here. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay, it looks like we have most of our group, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Seattle Independent Schools Virtual College Summit. We're excited that you're here. We have a great panel for you tonight, great group of speakers with lots of great information for you. So I'm just here to go over a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. First, your cameras and microphones are turned off, so don't worry, we can't see you or hear you. But if you have any questions, hopefully you can see and hear us okay. If you can't, just send us a message using that Q&A button on your Zoom toolbar and we can help troubleshoot that with you. Speaking of the Q&A button, that's really your best way to engage with our presenters today. So as you have questions throughout the session, they'll reiterate this, but feel free to submit those using that Q&A button. They'll be monitoring those throughout the session and answering those throughout as well. So they're happy to answer those. If we don't get to all of your questions today, that's okay. They'll get a full transcript of all of those and be happy to follow up with you after the session as well. Don't forget, this is just one of many different sessions being offered today, so be sure to check the StriveScan website where you signed up for any additional sessions you might be interested in. And then this session is being recorded as well as all of the others, so those will all be posted to that same website where you signed up as well within about a week or so. So be sure to check back there and you can recap all the great information that's being shared today. So with that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're thrilled that you're here. I'm Kelly Harrington. I'm the Director of College Counseling at University Prep, and I'm joined by my colleague.
I'm Britton Nelson. I'm the Associate Director of College Counseling at University Prep. And we are joined by several of our colleagues on the college side. So Anna, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first, and then you can call on the next person after you. Sound good?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Anna Egeter. I'm at the University of Redlands as the Senior Associate Director of Admissions. University of Redlands is in Redlands, California, just east of Los Angeles. I'll pass it to Brittany.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany. I'm the Pacific Northwest Regional Coordinator for Arizona State University. So I am based here in Seattle, Washington. I did attend ASU. I'm from Arizona. I'm also an alum of our Honors College. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have today and looking forward to chatting with you all. I'll pass it to Andrea.
Hi friends, I'm Andrea Frangi. I'm the Regional Director of Admission for the George Washington University, located in this Washington. I actually live in West Seattle, which is apparently now an island, so yay. But GW is a school located in the heart of our nation's capital, just 4 blocks away from the White House and across the street from the State Department, and I will call on Erin.
Hello, happy Sunday, everybody. My name is Erin Olson. I'm an Associate Director at Santa Clara University, located in the heart of the Silicon Valley Bay Area in Santa Clara, California. Happy to be on this panel with all of you today.
Wonderful. What a great dream team. We thought we would share some fun facts about honors colleges and schools within schools before we start asking questions. We'd also like you to remember that you can chat in your questions as well, and we'll leave ample time at the end to answer those questions. So there have been 3 waves of growth in honors programs. The first round were really created in the 1960s. Then there was another growth period in the 1980s, and then in the early aughts, in the early 2000s. And if you're looking at the data there, that means every 20 years, there's this uptick. So we're expecting another boom in honors colleges 2020 and on. 60% of honors programs have been established since 1994. So many honors programs are more recent, and there are 1,503 honors programs at 2,500 nonprofit undergraduate institutions in our nation. Schools within schools were started mostly in the late 1960s, And many schools within schools follow an innovative and more student-driven curriculum, and some practice self-governance by students. So that's a little bit of a background on honors programs and schools within schools, which leads us into our first question for our panelists. And I thought maybe Brittany, since you're an alum of an honors program, you could answer this first question, and that is, what is an honors college?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's actually a few different terms, I think, that get thrown around. Like you mentioned, an honors program, an honors college, there's an honors experience. So an honors college typically will have some kind of residential experience associated with it. So you have the larger university or institution, and then the honors college really is oftentimes a small corner of campus or a niche on campus where students will live with other honors students. There'll be honors specific faculty, honors courses, some additional opportunities available to students in that really cohort of students. There's typically an additional application process to be a part of that honors college. And oftentimes it comes with additional perks like smaller class sizes or priority class registration, registering for your classes. And typically there's some sort of additional project, capstone, thesis experience as a part of that. Not always, but oftentimes that's a part of it. And that's a real benefit to students then as they go on to graduate school or employment, to have this exciting project to speak about in those interviews or as they're working toward those opportunities. So that's an overview. I'd be happy to have any of my colleagues add if I didn't quite cover it all as well.
Erin or Andrea, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think one of the things that GW, being a research institution, participating in something like our University Honors Program is going to give you more of that liberal arts experience within the context of a research institution. So I think a lot of times on the high school side, we hear research and we think STEM, engineering, labs, which isn't necessarily true in the context of a research university. But the honors program at a research institution is definitely going to give you more of that liberal arts vibe than you might find outside of it.
Yeah, and I would just close that a majority of honors colleges, honors programs are open to students of all majors. There might be some exceptions, so you should probably look into that. But it'll span all majors and is often places for those students who are interdisciplinary kinds of thinkers, who are looking, to combine maybe an engineering program with classes in ethnic studies and women's and gender studies and sociology, because the hardcore, like Andrea mentioned, STEM classes might not have that curriculum built in, but if you want to take advantage of it, the honors program could be a great option for you.
The next question is a little bit more geared toward Anna. Can you tell us a little bit more about a school within a school and how that all works?
Yes, absolutely. So as Kelly mentioned, many of the schools within schools were created in the 1960s. And if you can think about what was happening in the 60s, especially in the United States, it was a time of quite a bit of progressive education, really rethinking all parts of probably our culture and kind of communities. And so education really responded in a very progressive way with colleges within colleges, or schools within schools. So at the University of Redlands, we have something called the Johnston Center for Integrative Studies. Very long term, we just call it Johnston. And within Johnston, a student actually builds and creates their own academic program. There is also a residency part of the experience, so very similar to an honors college, as Brittany mentioned, and that allows students to have a very intentional living and learning community that has a whole self-governance. There is community meeting once a week, for example, in Johnston, where students actually rewrite their entire set of community standards every single year. And then the students build their own academic program. And so the approach is a very different one. It's a kind of ultimate freedom. But I also remind students that when I talk about Johnston specifically, that with freedom comes responsibility. And so for many students, Johnston is really appealing, or a specialized progressive college is really appealing. And for some students, it is the last thing they're interested in, because it really does have a very specific purpose in mind and sort of keeping those things in mind. Admittedly, a lot of those school within schools have kind of dissipated and disappeared to some degree, but you actually have one right in your backyard. So Fairhaven College is a part of Western Washington University, was also founded in the 1960s, 1967. I'll admit I looked it up while the other folks were talking because I knew it was the 60s, but and it's interesting, they are at a public institution, and so they can also exist at a really wide range of places. While we're talking about specific programs here today, I will also mention there's a number of other colleges that created kind of progressive approaches kind of as a whole in the 1960s. And so some of those exist as well, but that very progressive educational movement created some really interesting programs that allow a student to take a slightly different path while pursuing that four-year degree.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. One question I think that a lot of the families and students have are, what are some of the special advantages? And Brittany, you touched upon a few of those, but I was wondering if each of you could talk about what you see as the special advantages of being in an honors program or a school within a school. So why don't we start with Erin?
Sure. Yeah. So to reiterate some of Brittany's points, which are not uncommon, priority registration is a big one. Even at a school, the size of Santa Clara or some of my other colleagues here that are on the smaller side, it can still help to have a leg up and to choose those classes, especially again, if you're looking to be a double major, or you just really need to make sure you have a little more control over what's available to you. The second key piece, I would say, is really looking at your opportunities to work one-on-one with faculty mentors. Even if we're not known as a research institution, the honors program is really your best place to get those kinds of opportunities. And I know, speaking from experience from what I've seen our students do, those coming out of our honors program tend to be the ones most likely to get those impressive fellowships like the Fulbright program or the Oxford program. And so I would say that's another big benefit to looking at honors programs.
Great. Andrea, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. I think one of the things that we don't often think about as it pertains to starting at a new school is finding community and how that can really influence retention rates and, like, from your perspective, your experience of going away to school. And so if you're looking at universities that might be a little bit on the bigger side, or if you're looking at schools where you might be the only one from your high school or your community or your town that's going there, being a part of something upon arrival can really help with finding community. Not all of us are like super extroverted and are able to like walk up to perfect strangers and introduce ourselves at all times. If you are, I applaud you. I don't have that skill set, but I think being a part of a community can definitely help with that transition from high school to college, because you're just coming in, as many of my colleagues mentioned, in many cases, you're coming into a living and learning community. So you will be in class with these students, as well as spending time outside of class, residing in community with them as well. And I don't love to make the athlete comparison, but there is something to be said about like showing up and being part of a team. And if the team that you're a part of is the honors team, like, go team.
Do you get a varsity letter? Brittany, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Sure. Yeah, I think both Andrea and Erin mentioned some great key points. Community is especially huge at a place like ASU. I think we're approaching 75,000 students across our 4 campuses. So really opting into Barrett the Honors College, our honors experience, shrinks that down, tenfold. Really, I think now our honors college in total across 4 campuses is less than about 7,000 students or so. So you really do get that smaller experience. But then at the same time, while having a small liberal arts experience, you then can also go to a Pac-12 football game, right, that night. So it really is the best of both worlds, I think, opting into that experience. And I completely agree with the the research component as well, getting some additional one-on-one faculty access. That's a huge thing for our honor students. Instead of the typical one advisor that students get, honor students have 2 additional advisors, one to help them navigate their honors credits and that curriculum, as well as a faculty honors advisor. So someone in their major or in their career interest area who's really kind of raised their hand to say, I want to work with honors students. So you now have a point person for career questions, research opportunities. Maybe they can connect you to a company you want to work for. So it's really just sort of taking everything that the university has to offer and kind of serving it up to you on a silver platter almost. So I think everything all that other folks have mentioned as well is really part of the benefit.
Beautiful. Such great responses. Anna, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so many of the programs that were created in the 60s, these schools they're very different in focus, but many of them have a very integrative and interdisciplinary approach. And while absolutely a lot of colleges, many colleges, all you do a double major or create your own major, the intentionality of that is really appealing. So if you're somebody that has 2 very different interests or 3 very different interests, and they maybe don't play nice together on paper, but in your head, they absolutely play nice together, or you have a very niche interest, a lot of times some of these specialized schools will really allow you to expand on that. So an example is we have a student that graduated about 5 years ago with a degree in the politics of space, as in outer space. And he loved space, he loved the idea of space, but he didn't want to go into, he wasn't necessarily a physicist, but he wanted to really explore space as a concept. He now works for a little organization called NASA as their communications director. And so he was able to take all of those different ideas that he was interested in and kind of throw them into one. And so if you're somebody that has that really interesting interest and that you're like, there's no way I could study that, or my mom is telling me I can't, you can. And I can tell you can do it in a lot of different ways, that you absolutely don't have to look at a school within a college like a Johnston, but sometimes it's kind of like your match made in heaven. And so it's something really good to look at. And I just use the word heaven and I use the word outer space. So, hey, apparently I stuck with the theme here for a second. So, but yeah, a lot of colleges will allow you to do that variety, but the intentionality sometimes at a specific program is really, really appealing for a lot of students.
So the next question has to do a little bit with the application process. Is this something that you can apply for when you arrive on campus, or do you have to apply while you're still in high school? At what stage in the application process does that happen? So why don't we start with Andrea, if you want to answer that question.
Sure. So in the case of GW, both. Pretty typically, students are applying for honors programs as part of their application to the university. So I know for many institutions, not necessarily the ones that are all represented here, but at GW, if you're going to indicate that you're interested on the in the honors program on the common application, the additional writing components will automatically populate onto the supplemental or the member page, which is what I think we call it now. So it's pretty hard to miss them, although it's definitely possible. If you do, feel free to email me and I can point you in the right direction. But we do reserve some space for students who join GW as non-honor students and decide during their first year, oh my gosh, this is the community for me. I want to be a part of it. We typically will admit about 15 students as rising sophomores. So that would be an application process that you would go through as a first year student.
Brittany, anything to add about the application process for Arizona State?
Yeah, thank you. So similarly, we do have a few entry points. So most commonly, students will apply as part of their initial application. For us, it is a separate secondary application. I wish it was built into the common application. That would be wonderful. But right now, after you submit your application to ASU, you then get an email about 48 hours later that has your ID, and then you take that and go into the honors website to apply. And it does have letters of recommendation, essays, activities list, common items you probably already have prepared. You'll just pop those into your honors application. But like Andrea said, if you decide after you get to campus, oh, I wish I really would have applied. Can I still be a part of that? You can. We do have 2 additional entry points. So you can apply December of your first year to start in the spring with the Honors College, or we do also have an upper division track. So if after your first 2 years, you decide you want to join the Honors College, you can do that starting as a junior, or if you're going to be a transfer student to ASU, that's a great pathway as well. So there are a few different options and kind of advising all along the way as well.
Erin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, not to complicate things, but Santa Clara does it differently than GW and ASU. So students to Santa Clara, once you find out that you're admitted, that's when the honors application opens. So for us, it has a completely different due date. It's due April 1st of every year. And we promise you will find out before May 1st, so that if it is really in part of your college decision-making process to be in an honors program, that you would know for Santa Clara that you are in there first. But yeah, it is a completely different application process. The honors committee does have access to your Common App, so that is still involved. There are 2 additional essay questions specific to the honors program that change out every year. So you will for sure get notification from us after you're admitted if you want to pursue that, that option to apply to the honors program.
And I would say similarly that many of these schools, and I believe Fairhaven is the same, I'll use again our local group, has an application as well. So you've heard from all of us that yes, there's an application. That is the common theme, and we all treat it a little bit differently. But at the Johnston program at Redlands, we also have a separate application, and we send it to students beforehand, or they can apply actually even in the summer all the way up to the start of the year if there is space available. And so a good question to ask if you're looking at an honors program or a specialized school is what is that good timeline? Erin's going to tell you to hold off. You don't need to worry about it. And whereas other places, the early bird might really catch the worm. So keep those different things in mind. And I'd encourage you to really look at the questions. We may not be able to tell them to you. I don't know if Erin's questions change every year at Santa Clara. She says they change, so if you can have access to them ahead of time, but really spend some time on those questions because they're usually really thoughtful and also really indicative of the program itself. At Redlands, the Johnston program has 5 short answer questions, and they really are getting at kind of, do you understand what you're getting into? Because we are very different. So I'll tell you one of the questions is, what have you enjoyed most about your educational experience, and when have you enjoyed the least about your educational experience? And so sometimes there's no right or wrong answer to any of these. These aren't meant to be trick questions, just like the Common App doesn't have those, but they really can, a lot of times those questions speak to the community that you're thinking about joining. And as you've heard from my co-panelists that all work at honors colleges, they're very different as well. And so don't think that one honors college or one school, it fits all of them, may fit all of you, but is definitely something to think about, and will give you some also good hints in terms of what sort of, again, community you might be joining.
Fabulous. And you kind of teed me up for the next question, Anna, so thank you. And that is, are there additional things that you're looking for in applicants who are applying to an honors program or a school within a school? What are the different things, the different factors?
Yeah, I'll keep going with that, in that, again, because it's a very different approach, the onus of education is much more on you. As we're looking to know, do you know what you're getting yourself into? So do you have an element of kind of self-motivation, intrinsic kind of encouragement to yourself? You don't have to know that you want to major in the politics of space. You don't have to have your idea figured out, but you have to be excited about exploring that idea. We know that most students, when they're applying as a rising first-year student into college, haven't had it all figured out. But ultimately, we want to know that you understand some of those ideas that we're being asked of you. We are also living and learning intentional community. And so there's an element of kind of being a part of our community as well. And so kind of some community standards, those sorts of things. But we have the whole walk of life. We have some students that have not fit well in traditional education and they feeling very disenfranchised and are excited about something different. And other students that are probably looking at, going off into a very specific area and excited about X, Y, and Z. So I have seen the whole range of students that are interested in a Johnston. And I think that is a great example of why it's really appealing for many folks, is that it can suit lots of different learning styles and interests. But you have to have bought into it to begin with.
Do any of our other panelists have things that they want to add in terms of what they're looking for?
I would just add, being the type of student that wants to go above and beyond, similar to Anna's point, the traditional path that may or may not be set out for you. I know our honors program students talk about how much they love reading and writing. If that is not you, then maybe honors programs are not quite the space for that, right? We really are looking for students that have engaged in those types of thought-provoking conversations, difficult dialogues in their kind of high school experience, whether that's taking advantage of your curriculum at high school or branching out in your local communities. So those types of extracurriculars that also come on the side, but are ways to infuse that educational experience too. Those would be what we would look for our honors applicants.
I did want to add just one point as well. I think as students are also looking at honors colleges or programs, it's oftentimes very different than an honors experience in high school or like an AP test or something. If you've done anything like that and you're super burnt out and you're like, I don't really know if I want to do honors in college, it's oftentimes like a few folks have mentioned, really giving you the opportunity to specialize in the things that you're most interested in or explore different opportunities. So I would really advise students to look at it from that perspective as well. And similarly, from the admission perspective, as we're looking at it, we're really looking for students who want to be a part of that. So showcasing that in your essay. What about you is unique? What are you bringing to the community? Again, we've sort of reiterated this a few times now. It's really about that experience, the community aspect. So we want to know leadership ability, maybe an unusual experience you've had. What talents do you have? What are you going to bring that's going to make this community really exciting, fun, and different for the students that are a part of it? So I would definitely say to focus on that. I think Anna made a great point about those essay questions too, being really thoughtful with those. I think one of our questions this year is, if you could only bring one item with you 20 years into the future, and then you had to explain the history of humankind or something just with this one item, what would it be? And it can't be a flash drive or a computer. So just really kind of funky questions, just showcasing why, what's unique about an experience, or how do you think differently, and really showcasing that in some way.
Excellent. Kelly, go ahead.
Just one quick question that was chatted in, and we would like to ask everybody out there in the Zoom land to please start chatting in your questions. This is the point of the program where we want to answer all the questions that you have. Just by a show of hands, how many of you are open to all students regardless of major for your honors program or school within a school? Fabulous, that was chatted in. Another question was, are there any financial benefits of being part of an honors program? And how about a show of hands, how many of you award sometimes merit money, so money based on academic ability to students in your honors program? Sometimes? Okay, so sometimes there's a financial benefit, sometimes there's not. Does anybody want to talk a little bit more about that?
It probably varies institution to institution. I'll speak from Santa Clara that our merit scholarships come first, but then it tends to be those students who were recipients of it and demonstrated that kind of high caliber thinking and engagement that then go on to the honors program. But it's not like the honors program then gives you another merit scholarship. At least that's how it works for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, typically, in our case at least, students who are admitted to the honors college within one of the first two deadlines, so the first being November 1st, the second being January 15th, then have access to apply for additional scholarships that are specific to the Honors College. So it's not a guarantee, there's no promise of additional financial benefit just by that admission, but you have access to a different pool of scholarships that other students would not. So in that way, there would be, if that makes sense.
So a couple other questions that have been chatted in. I think all of you would agree that it doesn't matter what you major in to be in this program. The majors are available to everybody. But the question that I have that was also sort of chatted in was about what are some of the curricular differences between students who are in the honors program and students who are not in an honors program? Is your curriculum different? Are you taking a different core? Are your honors courses different in your major? Like how, on like kind of a granular curricular level, how are things a little different? And Erin, why don't you get started with that?
Sure, yeah. So how it works at Santa Clara is that by the time you graduate, if you came in the kind of early typical first year experience, which we have a cohort of about 70 students that do that, by the time you graduate, you will take 9 honors level courses. They will all already be infused into the core curriculum. So it's nothing additional, right? It's just taking your introductory cultures and ideas course is now going to be the honors version of that, right? Or your ethics course to fulfill Santa Clara's core is now the honors level of your ethics course. I would say the only additional curriculum thing, which I think I've heard some of my colleagues say, is that senior capstone. Sometimes there might be a class that's involved with that, and that would be extra legwork for you to get through. But again, I think that one-on-one maybe peer mentoring or faculty mentoring that you get through that is nothing to dissuade you from pursuing just that little additional component.
So a great question that was chatted in was, would there be a reason not to do an honors program? Who is it not a good fit for?
Sure, I'd be happy to tackle that one first. I think, so GW just this last year made the decision that we were going to have a required residential component for our honors program, and it would exist on our Mount Vernon campus. For any of you who've maybe been in Washington, DC, you have likely walked past the GW Foggy Bottom campus, which is right in the heart of the city. Well, surprise, 3 miles away, we own a 25-acre property as well, and about 700 of our first-year students live up there, including the 135 to 150 first-year honors students. So if you're somebody who is thinking like, I want city, I want to be 4 blocks away from the White House 24 hours a day, then perhaps you might consider applying for the honors program as a rising sophomore. And the other thing is, I think if you're a student who is pretty singularly focused, at least at GW, and doesn't want to have that academic omnivore, that's the University Honors Program wording, not mine, experience where it's more interdisciplinary, but you really want to do like mechanical engineering and like blinders on, please don't bother me with your, extensive writing experience, then you might not want to be part of the honors program. Although I do think it's beneficial for students from all academic backgrounds, it's not necessarily the right fit for everybody.
Can I also add that many times you've heard a number of us mention like an additional thing that you might have to do as a senior in certain instances or specialized research project, and that might seem really overwhelming. Within Johnston, as a sophomore, you actually have to present to a faculty what your curriculum is going to be because we didn't create one for you, so you have to do that. And as a senior, you have to defend it. You're sitting there going, oh my gosh, that is I don't want to do that at all. That is really overwhelming, or that's appealing and just it feels like that is a mountain that you cannot climb. Know that we're going to work with you to that process. You're not doing your senior capstone in your first year. You're not doing some of these really key parts that I think are probably the parts that you remember the most about your experience and you really take away. You're not doing them right from the beginning. And our programs are set up to get you to that point. And so don't be intimidated. Sometimes when you hear about something that might be a little bit different, may not be quite what you're thinking about, and ask questions about it, because I can talk to you about what that looks like, and that it actually really is. I would tell you that most students would tell you it's probably the most important part of their experience. I have sat in on them because any community member can, and they're just wonderful celebrations to really support a student through that process. But when you're looking at it on paper, or you're looking at an application and you're not quite sure what to take into the future in 20 years, with your essay question, ask us questions, because we can help kind of explain that process a little bit further, and also remind you that you're not going to be doing that on day one. It's a part of the program, and in many ways, these, as you've heard all of us, we're smaller communities within our prospective universities. Those communities are designed to help you and bridge those pieces together.
We had a question a couple times chatted in asking about acceptance rate. So how selective are these programs? And Anna, since you were just talking and yours is a little different, do you want to start and then we'll pass it on to the others and we'll just kind of do rapid fire?
Yeah, so our admitted rate is definitely more selective than Redlands in general, but not extremely so. And really the question is one of good fit and good match. They're actually not looking at your transcript necessarily, but really looking at those questions that you wrote and your answers to them in terms of, are you a good fit for the program? And again, we see the whole range of students and experiences in that, but the admission rate is definitely more selective. We also have had a wait list for the last 3 years. We didn't last year because we all know what happened last year. But we have a last spring, but we've had a wait list for the previous 2 years. And actually the wait list at 2 years ago, we released a student into the Johnston program the day before orientation began. So again, pretty unique situation, and many of these colleges, as you've heard all of us say, have really specific numbers. We only have 40 spots. And so we don't have spot for number 41. And so many of us know that we're making some tough decisions. And a lot of times it's because we're really having to specialize those numbers.
How about you, Erin?
Yeah, I was just double checking my numbers. So for Santa Clara this past year, which was again a year unlike any other, we did see about a 30% increase in the number of honors applications. So I think that kind of again goes to the trend of students being maybe a little more informed about the college going process and about these honors opportunities, or universities doing a better job of marketing them to you and telling you about their advantages. So in terms of acceptance, similarly, more selective in terms of overall acceptance. Santa Clara hovers about 50%. In terms of the honors program, we had about 250 applications for those 70 spots. Again, for many of us, that level 2 application time, where the end of your first year at a university, that can be a really great in to the honors program. So don't discount it right from the get-go. I know we accept about 30 additional students who might have finished up their first year or who are transferring as well. So that would be the numbers for us.
Brittany, how about you at Arizona State?
Yeah, for ASU, so ASU as a whole, we offer assured admission for students that meet our requirements. So ASU in general is very accessible, and that's really the goal. Our honors college is a bit more selective. We do, as I mentioned earlier, have a few different deadlines, all which are non-binding. But because we're shaping the class as we go, they actually get more selective. So in total, each year, we bring in about 2,500 students at the high end across our 4 campuses. So we're filling those really as we go. So among that first deadline, it's about a 50 to 60% acceptance rate for the honors college, but by the late consideration 2 deadline in April, it's about 10%, maybe a little bit less. So I think there was a question, maybe I saw in the Q&A, or maybe I made it up. Is it beneficial to apply earlier to these programs? And I'd say for Barrett and ASU, absolutely. It's very beneficial to apply early for us.
And Andrea, how about GW?
Yeah, so our overall admit rate at GW hovers right around 38-39%, and the honors program is more competitive than that. But just because we offer you a spot in the honors program doesn't mean that you're going to accept it either. So like most institutions, we will offer more spots to our honors applicants than we will actually yield. which is pretty common. And sometimes we'll have students who come to GW and have done some additional research on the honors program and realize that maybe it's not the right fit for them, or they want to put it off until their sophomore year, or they don't want to live on the Mount Vernon campus. So there could be any variety of reasons, but usually, and I just had to pull out my phone to do math, usually our admit rate for honors is more like 25 to 30%.
Great questions. One question that was asked was, what's the difference between an honors program and graduating with honors? We throw around the honors terminology a lot, but what is the difference between an honors program and graduating with honors? Does anybody want to take that? And if so, go ahead.
I'll take a stab at it. Please correct me if I am wrong, but my interpretation of it, based on my time working at Santa Clara, is that graduating with honors is purely GPA based. And it is if you fall within a certain level, GPA threshold wise within your program or your university, right? So you might hear phrases like cum laude or magna cum laude or summa cum laude. All of those are fancy Latin words for graduating with honors. Separate and apart is the honors program, which, some may have a GPA minimum that they want to hold you to, but you might not see, vice versa. You might see an honors student who did not graduate with honors, but you might see a student who graduated with honors, not in the honors program. So, or you can be both, and you are just a high achiever in all senses of the word. So I would say that is my interpretation of the two key differences.
There's
also some colleges that allow you to do an honors thesis, and that also may be a way to get an honors designation as well. There is absolutely, though, a GPA requirement, I think, with those programs as well. So there's a variety of things out there. I will also, though, put in a plug if you're looking at a college that does not have an honors program or does not have honors designation, that is not something that's going to hold you back when you're looking at graduate schools or looking at employment, all those sorts of things. It's something that I think is more than anything else, just a really great representation of what you've worked on and as a point of pride. And a lot of times you've done that specialized project to go with it, but you can absolutely do many of those same things that employers or graduate schools are looking for without that honors college designation or graduation or a unique college like the Johnston program. So know that is not the only path to go towards that, but absolutely is a nice feather in your cap if that's a direction to pursue.
One more question that popped up was about the size difference in your classes. And I think this mostly applies to Brittany because Arizona State is probably one of the bigger ones represented here, but our class size is smaller in the honors program.
Great question. Yeah, that is especially applicable, I think, to ASU. And I'm sure if anyone else wants to jump in, please do. Yes, so for ASU as a whole, we do, for some of those larger, especially first year lecture type courses, those do get pretty big, like up to 300 students. But in general at ASU, we actually still do keep about 80% of classes fewer than 40 students in size. So not every single class without honors will be huge, right? But with the honors college, every single honors class that you take is capped at 25 students. And with, throughout your time at ASU, without getting too into the detail on the curriculum, you're replacing about a third of your classes at ASU with honors classes or experiences like study abroad or internships and things. So about a third of your classes then become smaller as well. But we do also offer things like honors contracts so that you can make any class, even your non-honors classes, honors through doing a special project with the professor or meeting regularly or whatever it might be. So in a number of ways, you can kind of make your experience feel more personal and small through the honors college, definitely.
Anyone else want to add anything about class sizes in their programs?
We had a couple of questions that were chatted in that we addressed a little bit earlier in the program, and I'm just going to kind of recap as we're getting close to the time frame here. Both public and private schools offer honors programs. Those of us who work in college counseling are famous for saying, in response to an answer, it depends. We often joke that on our tombstone, it's going to say, it depends. So in terms of the application process, it depends on how you apply. Some it is when you submit your application, you click the box and you apply to the honors program. Some schools, after you apply, then you fill out the application. And then a question that was also answered at the beginning was about the difference between honors programs and schools within schools. So a school within a school, usually self-governance, a little bit more choose your own adventure, but it is a different than a set honors program. So hopefully I've recapped some of the questions that we answered a little bit earlier, and we are so grateful to see so many participants. We have about 90 that are on this Zoom call, so thank you for that. We have about a minute left, and I'm a huge fan of podcasts right now. It's my COVID-19 addiction. So I'm going to ask you each one quick question to kind of round out our presentation. So I'll start with Anna. And my question to you is, what is your favorite part of the school within a school at Redlands?
I love the autonomy and the ownership that a student gets with a Johnston experience that allows them to really flourish, but sometimes in an area that they didn't think that they were allowed to, but give full permission to do so through a program like Johnston.
Fabulous. Brittany, you were an honors student at the honors program at Arizona State. What was your favorite part of it?
I did really love the community aspect, which I've said now 800 times, but I really did love that part of it. I worked in the Honors College as a recruiting assistant. I gave tours. It was really just kind of my corner of campus. Majority of my friends were in the Honors College, so really just sort of found my people through that experience. And I also got to do some work I didn't think I would without getting into too much detail. I ended up doing my honors thesis on social media and romantic breakup distress and looking into cyber psychology and all of these really interesting kind of fields, working with an ASU alum who does Facebook user experience research, and obviously didn't go into that field, but I just got to pursue kind of a random interest I had, and that was something I probably could have found my way to without the Honors College, but it really put it right in front of me, which I really appreciated.
Fabulous. Andrea, how do you think honors programs are going to evolve while these students are on a college campus?
Yeah, great question. I think as we're coming up on that 20 years, that honors colleges are doing a really good job of evaluating the types of students that they've historically been attracting and the curriculum that they have been teaching, and recognizing that it has not necessarily always been the most inclusive, and are working really hard to maybe step away from all of the quote unquote Western civilizations that have really been the cornerstone of many honors programs, and are looking at all of the other cultures and communities that have not necessarily been represented in a historically honors named experience, and understanding that critical thinking, community building, and having diverse academic interests are universal, and really looking at the populations of students that we're attracting and that we are teaching and that we are embracing in our honors programs.
Wow, fabulous. And last but not least, Erin, what is your favorite part of reading an honors applicant to Santa Clara?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I would say my favorite part is are the prompts and the creativity and ingenuity that come from those prompts. If any of you have gotten to like the Santa Clara supplements, they're honestly pretty basic. There never any reason to abandon the application. But I think when you hear questions, like Brittany mentioned, of an item to bring 20 years from now, there's just a lot more thought and depth to that that can really help us get to know the student way beyond the 3 activities that you put in your extracurricular activities on the Common App. So that'd be my favorite part, is we get to really know you, and you think outside of the box in ways that I definitely do not. So I always really applaud the minds of these 18-year-olds who think far beyond their years.
Fabulous. So we want to applaud our panelists. We're giving you high fives in your boxes here. We also want to applaud all of the families that have joined us. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Seattle Area Independent School College Counselors and Rainier Scholars for pulling this program together. Please enjoy the next round of sessions that'll start in about 12 minutes. So thank you again. And thank you, Tyler from StriveScan. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.